Hello, I'm Layla McKinnon. Welcome to A Current Affair. Kerry Packer was generous, charismatic and revered, but aside from his media mogul and cricketing pioneer persona, he was extremely private. It's been 20 years since he died, and finally his inner circle is ready to tell us about the real Kerry, a man who was very kind and had the biggest heart.
Mrs. Kerry Packer and her children James and Gretel sadly report the passing last evening of her husband and their father Kerry.
I was incredibly sad because he was too young to die.
He had a big heart, but he didn't want to show it.
Kerry Francis Bullmore Packer was a supremely private man.
An enigma, I think.
Loyalty meant everything to him. Friends and enemies alike respected that privacy.
Kerry Packer was the kindest person I honestly have ever met, I believe.
I'm breaking the rule, but I think 20 years after his death, people should know what he was really like.
Thank you for being a friend.
Few got close, and when they did, they accepted that that friendship came with a lifelong allegiance.
He placed a great importance on loyalty.
Why was it so important to him, do you think?
Because so many people let him down. And so many people betrayed him.
We're still short of pictures, are we?
I have to confess, I felt I did. Packer was my boss. 1990, I was working in the 9 newsroom when I answered a phone call from the irate media mogul soon after he'd suffered one of his 4 heart attacks. I'll paraphrase. When you own a television network, you don't expect to have your own cameras shoved in your face. Throw in a few expletives and I'm sure you get the gist. Packer had suffered the attack while at the National Polo Tournament at Sydney's Warwick Farm. He was clinically dead for several minutes.
Oh, I'm optimistic that he'll get out of hospital.
Renowned heart surgeon Victor Chang performed the life-saving heart surgery.
I don't think he likes seeing me. That's a bad sign.
A week later, Packer wanted to leave hospital to watch his beloved polo team play.
Oh, and I probably didn't even know his name.
Paramedic Paul Featherston was assigned to accompany him. To avoid the media, they snuck out of the hospital car park.
Believe it or not, I complained and I thought, why am I going to nursemaid some bloody millionaire, you know, when there's plenty of other people around here we can be looking after.
Featherston was there when the irate KP turned on a cameraman that day.
KP is out of the car chasing this bloke.
Leave me alone. Get out of my way.
Remember, a week earlier, Kerry Packer had had a massive heart attack.
He said to me, I appreciate that I'm so privileged that I can come to St Vincent's Hospital and get the treatment that I get here. He said, because there's a lot of people that can't. And I thought, that's humbling, isn't it?
It was the beginning of a great friendship. Featherstone, in effect, became Packer's personal paramedic.
You know, he was a very powerful man, but he had a goodness about him as well.
But Packer's goodness didn't extend to some.
I appear here this afternoon reluctantly.
Fronting a parliamentary inquiry, Packer gave as good as he got.
Of course I am minimising my tax, and if anybody in this country doesn't minimise their tax, they want their heads ripped.
Yeah, they were up on this podium, about 8 of them, you know, ready to get into him, and he just sat there and controlled the whole thing.
It was classic Packer.
Because as a government, I can tell you, you're not spending it that well that we should be donating extra.
He just sat there and did his look and did his head wobble, and they went on and on and on, trying to nail him.
You're either going to have to believe me or call me a liar.
He could have been voted Prime Minister that day, I think, when they were questioning him about his tax.
He could be voted Prime Minister today.
And I miss the man now, you know, because we need good leadership in the world, let alone this country. And boy, oh boy, was he a leader, you know.
Ida Buttrose's journalistic career began under the Packer umbrella. First Sir Frank Packer and then his son Kerry.
People are familiar with the side of Kerry that was shown on the TV specials that have been made about him since he died.
This month, Cleo magazine talks...
Buttrose edited the groundbreaking Cleo magazine.
This magazine's going to be a great success.
But he was quite shocked, I think, sometimes by the frankness of some of the stories we ran.
And we wouldn't be the same without the weekly.
Then, as editor of the Women's Weekly, Buttrose commissioned a story about cot deaths. Researchers at Sydney University were close to a medical breakthrough, but were short of money. $50,000 meant they could complete the work.
Now, this was in the 70s, so there was a lot of money.
A lot of money. Without hesitation, Packer offered to make up the shortfall.
So we gave them $50,000 to continue their research.
Just like that, it wasn't...
Just like that. Just like that. He didn't want to meet them. He didn't want... No, he just trusted us.
Many of his staff were the recipients of Packer's kindness. 3 workers contracted multiple sclerosis. He looked after them for the rest of their lives.
He was very generous and very kind. But see, no one knows these things.
Another employee leaving the company needed to pay out his company mortgage. Packer wiped it.
He just wanted to do something because he was a kind-hearted man. That this was a side of him that he kept hidden, and only those who were trusted to carry out his wishes were ever familiar with it.
I mean, I read the stories about me. I don't like me.
His influence just spread far and wide, but he was just.
Paul Featherston witnessed the kindness firsthand when a little girl called Millie Quast wandered away from her rural home. 4-year-old Millie vanished from a homestead near Packer's Elliston property in the Hunter Valley in 2001. It was bitterly cold, the area was flooded. It was feared she'd been swept away. Featherston asked KP if they could help in the search.
And I said, would it be possible to borrow your aircraft? And he just sort of looked at me really strange and says, well, what are you doing here? You know, like...
Packer also sent more than 100 workers, food and his personal paramedics that day.
And that's what Packer loved. He loved team efforts and people pulling together. Admittedly, he's a hard man, but he was a soft man too, I believe.
Millie was found alive.
We'd just like to thank everyone involved for the effort.
But it was Packer's 1990 heart scare that publicly revealed a side to the billionaire businessman that few knew.
He loved Australia, he loved Australians, and it used to make me sad to see so much bad press that he got, and because of ignorance, people just didn't know what he was like. He was a fantastic guy.
In a deal with the New South Wales government, Packer paid about $3 million to put defibrillators into every ambulance in the state. They became known as Packer Wackers.
Much appreciated for your donation.
Pleasure.
That one act contributed to so many lives being saved. Every time someone was saved by using a defibrillator, we used to send him a little red heart.
But in the year 2000, it wasn't his heart that was failing.
I admire that man, absolutely admired him to bits.
Former Royal Navy pilot Nick Ross was Packer's personal pilot for 20 years.
Our very first conversation, he said, you know, sort of, can you fly, kind of thing. And I said, you don't have to, Mr. Packer, you don't have to worry. When I'm flying you, the helicopter's carrying the 2 most important people in the world, me and you, in that order. I'm a pretty straight shooter. I don't take any bullshit, and I think he appreciated that.
Packer's chronic kidney condition was worsening. Ross's affection for and devotion to his boss saw him give him a kidney.
We never, ever discussed it until the day before we went into hospital. I rang him and I said, look, Kerry, I'm going into hospital tomorrow. I said, to get ready for this kidney donation. Do you think we ought to have a little bit of a chat? So we laughed. He said, yeah, come on down and come and see me. And I went to see him, and in typical fashion, we talked about everything except that for about 3 hours. And I said, oh, well, I'll see you then. I'll see you on the other side then. And then that was it.
After the successful transplant, Packer became an organ transplant advocate.
He was so happy that I'd done it and grateful, and you know, he just gave me. You can't imagine the old bugger giving me a hug, but he did. He gave me a hug in the hospital.
On Boxing Day 2005, Kerry Packer died from kidney failure.
He was a passionate believer in this country's decency and worth, and always wanting to do something to better it.
His son James presenting the eulogy.
There were many legendary aspects to the Kerry Packer story.
But even in death, his trust in friends was tested.
After his death, all sorts of people that he would have considered trusted friends came out and talked about him in ways that he would not have enjoyed. And I don't think friends do that.
A lot of people wanted to take from him rather than give him genuine recognition for who he was.
For the truly loyal few, Kerry Packer was someone to be honoured, to be respected.
You know, no matter what he wanted, I would have done for him because I just believed in him so much.
Kerry Packer, in my opinion, was the absolute Australian icon.
An amazing man.
Very. And that's why we'll never see a like of him again.
Deep down in his heart, he was a giver. I do respect and I do like the man, and I do miss him. You know, he was such a great man.
Millie and her family probably said it best.
Oh, just God. Thanks
yeah,
everyone.
I can't imagine that. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll never see the likes of him again, says Ita, and a man who's likely to agree with that sentiment is the one and only Ray Martin, who joins me now. Ray, thank you so much for coming into your old stomping ground.
My pleasure.
To share your stories about Mr. Packer. Well, where do you start? He was one of a kind.
He was indeed, but compelling but complex, as Ida suggested there, that he was not just the richest man in Australia for a couple of decades, but the most powerful. And because he owned this station, and because he owned the Bulletin, Women's Weekly and so on, politicians that everyone had to listen to him. But I'm not sure that he loved life. I'm not sure that he was as secure as he should have been.
Yeah, he loved Channel 9. He loved TV. He watched all the shows. What was it like when you were doing the show, knowing you had that passionate, outspoken, powerful viewer?
He loved television, not just Channel 9, he loved television. And I remember one stage he rang me up when we were when I was doing Current Affair, and he said there are too many stories about prisons. And he said, you know, it looks like we're going soft on prisons. And I said, well, they're good stories at the moment. And I said, why? What's the problem? He said, well, ordinary people don't care about men who go to prison. And I said, with respect, Kerry, what would you know about ordinary people? You're the richest man in Australia. And he said, I won't use the language, but he said, I just know, son, I just know. And I think he did. Peter Meakin tells that story about how he rang up at one stage and there was something he didn't like on a Current Affair. And Meakin said, well, you know, you're only one viewer, Kerry. And he said, I own the place, so probably I'm worth 2 viewers.
Oh, fantastic. It was extraordinary, the feel he had for what would work. One example is Carols by Candlelight being his favourite show, and he had the directors and producers put the lyrics along with the little bouncing ball so everybody could sing along because he wanted to. He was a man of the people in a weird way.
Yes, he was. And something like that, he would ring up, I did 20 carols, and he'd ring up and say, I won't use the language again, but because the language was fairly choice, but he'd say, don't stuff it up. It's the loveliest night of the year, that sort of stuff. So, are you watching? Yeah, of course I'm watching.
Yeah, and I always think of him at this time of year because, of course, his passing came, you know, it coincided with that, his favourite event of the year. You did an interview, like 30 years, that was supposed to be more of a narrow focus, wasn't it? But it ended up being pretty wide-ranging.
He only, I said to him, he did 2 interviews, one with Parky and one with me, a half-hour interview on television. And I said, you're terrific at this, why don't you do more of it? And he said, look at the face, I'd scare the children. and that was the point. But we did it on a Current Affair, and we slotted 7 minutes. It was about rugby league and about the West Indies cricket tour, and that's what he wanted to talk about. And I had David Hurley, who was executive producer of the program, in my ear saying, stretch it, it's fantastic. So we did the whole program, never intending to. It sounded like someone was, we were flogging Kerry, but it wasn't the truth. He was so good that we extended 7 minutes to 22.
And you asked him about Australia becoming a republic, so let's just take a look at how he responded to that.
Well, why should we be a republic?
Because I think at this point in time we have to be seen to be independent. Even though we are independent, I think we have to be seen to be independent. I think Paul Keating is quite right. I think our future and our whole future lies in Asia, and I think it's hard to be part of the British Commonwealth and have your whole life in Asia, which is where I think we're going.
Do you think the royal scandals of the last 2 years have quickened the pace towards the republic?
Well, they certainly haven't. They haven't slowed it. I don't think whether you had the royal scandals or whether you didn't have the royal scandal, I think in the end you're going to have a republic, regardless.
Well, I guess 30 years on, the royal scandals haven't gone away, but we're probably further away from being a republic. What do you think Mr Packer would think of that? I think
it's interesting. People try and put Kerry Packer in a box, that he was this conservative businessman, etc. But he wasn't. I mean, he wanted a republic. He thought we'd become a republic. He wanted to change the flag. He didn't like the British flag in the corner of our flag. And on one occasion, he rang me up and said, I want you to organise a telethon. And I said, who for? And he said, for the cattle workers up in Queensland. And these were lefty union up there. And I said, why? And he said, because they're being treated badly. And I said, that's not your normal format, Kerry. And he said, don't give me that.
Yeah.
As it happened, we didn't. But I mean, he every time we put him in a box, he jumped out.
As I said, the interview with him did cover so many things, and it covered life and death. And I just want to play what he had to say.
Okay.
How many of your viewers, if they were in my position, would want to go to work every day?
But I think most of those viewers would say I wouldn't go to work at all, thanks very much. I just sit off.
You've got to go to work. You can't retire. If you retire completely, you lose it. It's nice to have something to go and do, and it's nice every now and again to be needed. It's nice every now and again to be able to make a contribution.
But you almost lost it a few years ago. Wasn't that a warning that maybe you should quit?
Certainly not. It's just a warning that I wasn't ready to go.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Dead for how long?
I don't know, 10 minutes. It's hard to remember. But,
did you find anything out there?
You want the good news or the bad news?
Give us the good news.
The good news is there's no devil. The bad news is there's no heaven.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's nothing.
Kerry, I'm feeling sorry for you again. I think I'd better make you some more money, eh?
Terrific. Sounds good to me.
Take a break and come back with Kerry Packer right after this. Dead for how long?
I don't know, 10 minutes. It's hard to remember. But,
did you find anything out there?
You want the good news or the bad news?
Give us the good news.
The good news is there's no devil. The bad news is there's no heaven.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's nothing.
Well, he was always a straight shooter, wasn't he?
Indeed.
Yeah.
He was indeed. I mean, the idea that he'd been dead for 8 minutes when he had the heart attack, and he said, I said, what's out there? He said, there's nothing out there. The good news and the bad news is that you die and there's no bright shining light. So.
Yeah. I remember seeing that reported everywhere. What a great interview. And you asked him about the prime ministers he'd dealt with, and he said most politicians find the task of changing the country too difficult, but almost all love the job and the power that comes with it. And you cleverly turned that back to him this way.
Do you understand that addiction of power? I mean, you've got it.
Oh, no, I don't. I don't understand. Well, I saw my father exercise a lot of power over a long period of time. I'm not infatuated by it. I saw it.
But it's better than the alternative, isn't it?
Listen, having power, having some money, having a good life is much better than all of the other alternatives. And I'm the last person in the world to argue with it. All I'm saying to you is it's an overrated commodity.
Doesn't guarantee you happiness.
Well, it doesn't guarantee you unhappiness either. But I mean, it's one of those things that's nice to use every now and again. But if it takes your life over, it becomes destructive.
Well, you knew him for a long time. How do you think he wielded his considerable power?
Oh, it was enormous. I mean, it was, as I say, the richest man in Australia. Certainly helped. But the fact that he owned Channel 9 and the fact he owned the Bulletin and the Women's Weekly gave him enormous power. So politicians and other people had to kowtow to him, and he knew that. And I think he used it pretty wisely. We wouldn't have a current affair if he hadn't come along. We wouldn't have 60 Minutes if he hadn't come along. He changed the face of television for the better. I think and that's one of his many legacies.
A year on from that interview on A Current Affair, he was instrumental in helping to get you an interview with Donald Bradman, Sir Donald Bradman. Can you just share with us what happened?
We were trying to get the interview with Donald Bradman, who'd never done a television interview in his long life. He was 87 at the time. And someone put up the idea that if we could raise $1 million for the Bradman Museum down in Barrel, so Kerry had to almost underwrite the $1 million if we didn't raise it that night. So, apropos nothing, a couple of weeks later, my phone went, and I won't use the language again, but the phone went on Saturday morning. It was, I've got the so-and-so interview, don't stuff it up. Language a bit more colourful than that. If Don didn't like it, that he'd burn it. Burn the bastard, he said, excuse the language. But he said, but don't stuff it up.
Now, 30 years I've interviewed princes and presidents and prime ministers. Why am I nervous in talking to Donald Bradman?
I don't think you are. I'm the one who's nervous.
And yet he was very ordinary. He was very, his love of sport, his love of football was just as raw and just as genuine as some bloke in a pub.
His enthusiasms were, even, he was never jaded, was he?
No. Especially when sport or cricket was involved.
Also, perhaps having a flutter, if you can call what he did gambling having a flutter. What can you tell us about his love of the punt?
Well, in that interview that we ran for 22 minutes on A Current Affair that night, he said, when he was getting made up, he said, ask me anything you like. I may not answer everything, but... And there'd been a story at the time about how he'd lost a lot of money, like $10 million, during the spring carnival, the racing carnival in Sydney. And so in the interview, I said to him, there's stories around that you've lost a lot of money at the track. And he said, oh, yeah, how much? And I said, 10 million, the story is. And he said, yeah, you only hear when I lose, you never hear when I win. And that's probably true.
It's interesting because when we look at those interviews that you did with him, you were a little bit cheeky with him, Did you feel confident doing that?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, you couldn't let him lose because he was a bully by nature and physically, and also the fact he was the richest man in the country and he owned Channel 9. But he loved an argument. I mean, he's a good... I'm a Sagittarian, he's a Sagittarian, if you believe that stuff. And we used to argue a lot, but it was always good-spirited and he'd sort of listen and then disagree. But I found with him generally that I never got pull through, as they say, from him. I don't know why. I never got... On one a couple of occasions I went in for contract discussions and I'd walk into the office in Park Street and he'd say, oh, I see, it's cuddle time, is it? I said, no, it's not. It's not. And he'd sort of
it was, though. You wanted a little loving, didn't you?
No, not from Kerry.
Oh, fantastic. Ray, thank you very much for coming. It's such a pleasure to have you back here on the set.
20 years is hard to believe, isn't it?
It's hard to believe that we won't see the like of him again.
No.